our final wine of our tasting of South Africa, but of course you could have jumped ahead and tasted in any order you wanted. But with this wine, I think you're getting something just supremely delicious, and of course it represents the king. Now, what do I mean by that? I think we just need to reflect back a little bit, once again, on South Africa's winemaking history. If we turn the clock back to 1990, South Africa, the dominant variety of South Africa's crush in red wine was actually Cinsault. And in fact, if we look back to 1990, 70% of the wine being crushed was specifically being crushed to be turned into brandy production. Now, by 1998, the situation has almost entirely changed and reversed. 70% of the wine being crushed, the grapes being crushed, are now being turned into wine instead of brandy or grape concentrate. So huge change in South Africa, and with that there's been a change in red wine varieties as well. As you can imagine, Cinsault, as the percentage of crush, has greatly declined. Pinotage picked up post-1994, but then eventually has settled around only 7% of the crush, so never really achieving the great red hope. Syrah still continues to grow for the crush in red wines in South Africa. It's at 10% nowadays, but it's Cabernet that's king. Not by much, but still king in terms of the crush. It occupies 12% of South Africa's red wine crush. So important for us to taste South African red wine. And again, I think when you have a glass of this, the perfume is extraordinary, the palate is so suave that it really is one of the best South African cabs that I have ever tasted. Now I'd like to position it just a bit more because South African Cabernet was actually my entry point, even though we sell more of the whites, my entry point into rediscovering South Africa. And it was the two writers, the husband and wife couple for the Wall Street Journal, who years ago, and I'm sorry I don't have the names off the top of my tongue, but who years ago wrote an article specifically about South African Cabernet. And I remember reading that article, and what they said was South African Cabernet is now at a renaissance point, and it feels like and tastes like the flavors of what was going on in Napa Valley, say 1974 to 1986. Felt like that kind of renaissance. Well, if you think back to those wines, even if you don't have a chance to taste them, those were the Cabernets that won the Paris tasting. Those were the Cabernets that those first early pioneers learned to perfect in Napa Valley. They were wines of very great elegance on the palate and really wonderful perfume on the nose and structure on the finish to age for a long time. This was before the chasing of Parker Points and before the cult wines that came about in Napa Valley. So I took that idea of South African Cabernet to heart and began tasting quite a lot of it. And indeed, that is what I found. Elegant Cabernets with enough concentration, but not so much that they were too high in alcohol, and then also with the structure to age for a long time. And amazingly enough, also many of them, including this one, don't have that particular smell that's associated with Pinotage. The other fascinating thing I find is that most South African Cabernets, including this one, I think compete on a world-class level, but yet are not priced like, say, their Bordeaux or their Napa Valley brethren. So that's how I'd anchor this wine, Mont Blois, in your mind. I know it says red blend, it's a Bordeaux blend that's based on Cabernet. You know, in particular, this is our, I think, shining example of the Robertson area. Mont Blois is not a new winery. It says on the label they've been around since 1884, but the husband and wife team, which are now the fifth generation, I think have reinvested in it and really broadened it and made it something special since the revolution of 94 to 99 in winemaking. And in fact, the woman, the winemaker, the husband and wife team, the winemaker is the wife, and she won South Africa Vintner of the Year for this particular bottling, Bacchus. To me, it's an extraordinary way to wrap up our South Africa tasting, and I hope you explore all of these wines, and in particular this delicious Cabernet.